Welcome to the January 15th, 2025 meeting of the Ann Arbor Renters Commission. The purpose of the Renters Commission is to advise the City Council and the City Administrator in matters affecting renters in the city. This Ann Arbor Renters Commission is made up of voting members who are appointed by the mayor and approved by City Council, two non-voting City Council liaisons, two non-voting members representing different landlord perspectives, and a non-voting representative to the University of Michigan Student Legal Services. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, you'll be able to speak through the webinar link or by phone, depending on your method of access to this meeting. To be called on to speak, callers must press *9 if listening by phone, or use the raise hand feature if viewing through the web link a2gov.org/renterscommission-meeting. You will then be called upon by city staff one by one using the last three digits of their phone number or by username if available for those accessing through the web link. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. Please state your name at the beginning of your comments. City staff will indicate when callers have 30 seconds left of their 3-minute comment period. After 3 minutes, they'll be placed on mute so that we can proceed to the next speaker. Moving on to roll call. Please state the city, township, and state, etc., where you're attending the meeting from. Commissioner Els?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Droppelman?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Chen?
Atlanta.
Must be warm there.
It
Councilmember Radina?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Was it Councilmember Harrison said that she's still at work and running late? Commissioner Pitts?
Here, Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Liao?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Welcome. Commissioner Larsenes?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Body?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Pace?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. Commissioner Rasuli?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Rosen?
Here in Ann Arbor.
Thank you. And Commissioner Ratcliffe, that's me, or Chair, and I'm calling from here in Ann Arbor. Moving on to the approval of the agenda. If everyone's had a chance to look at the agenda, is there anyone who will move to accept the agenda?
I'll motion. I'll
Thank
second.
you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Are there any comments about today's agenda? All right, then all those in favor of adopting today's agenda, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please unmute and say no. All right, the agenda is adopted and we'll move forward. Next is the approval of the minutes. If you've had a chance to read the December minutes, please, or I need someone to move to accept the December minutes.
I'll motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. Is there any discussion about the minutes? Any changes that need to be made? Okay, then all those in favor, we'll go ahead and move on to adopting the December minutes. All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, please unmute and say no. All right, the meeting minutes were approved and we'll go ahead and move forward to the first general public comment.
All right, it looks like we do have a couple folks in as attendees. So if you'd like to address the Renters Commission about any topic for up to 3 minutes, you can go ahead and press *9 to raise your hand if you're calling in. If you've joined with the Zoom link, you can use the raise hand feature. So if you'd like to address the Renters Commission, go ahead and raise your hand now, and we'll call on you to speak. All right, no attendees have indicated.
Okay, then we'll go ahead and move forward to the unfinished business, which is number 6 on the agenda. It's the update on the rent transparency ordinance. And there was an update that was sent to us and of the proposed ordinance that was sent to us at the commission and attached to the agenda. If Councilmember Regina can talk about it for a minute. We also, if people agree, then after the discussion about it, then there is a draft resolution that Hannah wrote that she'll go over.
Thank you, Chair Ripe. So I am happy that we are finally to the stage where this is getting finalized and hopefully moving toward approval. It is on the agenda for first reading at City Council on Monday. Councilmember Harrison and I are primarily sponsoring it. The mayor has already joined on as a co-sponsor, and I suspect others will as well. So I am optimistic that we will see this moving forward. This is coming after a lot of work. Special thanks to attorneys Reiser and Richards and to Gail Rosen, who has contributed a lot to our working sessions and given us an extra set of legal eyes who to get in there and also some of the real life challenges that she sees coming through her office. I will also note we've had conversations not just at this body but with the tenants union. We have met with some of the individual property owner interests, landlord interests, including I sat down last week with Landmark and the lobbyists that had kind of been calling around to council members to get some information. I will say there are still points at which we disagree, but they also came with some actual concerns that we have addressed already in the ordinance, and so trying to make sure that it's actually workable and functional. I think we all acknowledge that this is a situation where ultimately this isn't necessarily going to save anyone a lot of money because we can't limit the amount of rent that can be charged, and so these fees can ultimately be shifted over into the cost of rent. But what it does do is what we intend, which is to hopefully create some rent transparency here, allow tenants to shop apples to apples in the market, go out and actually see that the dollar amount being proposed in advertisements that is being put in front of them is the actual dollar amount that they will pay, and not something that will suddenly you'll be surprised with $300, $400, $500 in monthly fees on top of that base cost of rent. So this would actively require that there can be no mandatory fees. Any fee that can be incurred is a fee that a tenant would have to opt into, or have to be made aware of that they could incur based on an action that they take while living there. All of those things have to be disclosed clearly on the first page of the lease or in an addendum that is provided. And so it creates a lot more information for the tenants to have about what fees they could potentially incur, and also clarity around things like we wanted to make sure that folks weren't being charged for things they may not be using in those situations. And so, we made clear that, a parking fee is not something that can be an optional fee if a parking space is provided to every single tenant and you're opting in, but you don't have a choice to opt out, right? So parking is either part of rent and everyone has a spot, or individuals can opt in to paying for a parking spot and choose to pay a parking fee. So that's a good example of where this might play out in real life. And so anyway, I think we have landed in a pretty good place. We actually have addressed a number of the concerns that were brought to us by landlords that didn't actually impact the intent of the ordinance, but clarified things around like water charges and things like that, so that they're able to continue to operate and charge tenants without having individual hookups in every single apartment, which could raise costs for tenants in the end, things like that. And so I think we have landed in a good place. A ton has not changed in the ordinance from kind of those first meetings when we talked about it. There have been a lot of kind of tweaks to make sure that we are clear and closing any loopholes. So that's kind of where we've ended up. And I'm excited to introduce this for first reading on Monday, and would love to have this body's support.
Are there any questions about what's in the final, I guess, final draft of the ordinance that will be presented on Monday to count, or not Monday, Tuesday, to City Council for first reading? Hannah?
Yeah, I was wondering if like payment processing fees are considered an optional fee. I've had landlords that would pay, I don't know, it's usually a few dollar payment fee if you're doing it online, like with direct deposit or a credit card or something. Um, would that be considered avoidable? Because you could, in theory, pay with a check instead of a digital uh, payment method.
I think that is correct. I think that's where we landed. Because ultimately, yeah, as long as there is another option, for you to be able to avoid that fee by paying by check or something like that, it would become an optional fee.
Sheila?
I was wondering, are there any protections for tenants for the optional fees if they don't eventually end up getting the activity that they're paying for? For example, pest cleaning fee. I know some apartments within Washtenaw County, tenants have been paying that for years, have not seen any pest removal, and in fact have cockroach infestations in their buildings. Is there an easier avenue for tenants to dispute that?
So I guess I would be interested in knowing more about the individual situation there, because if tenants throughout the building are paying a pest fee, um, and that is not something that is happening in their individual unit, that seems to me to be what it would actually be a mandatory fee that they're charging for the property. And that would not be something that I think that they could charge as a fee anymore. If it's something that your individual unit is opting into, then I think that would be different.
I understand. So a building-wide trash fee or a building-wide pest fee would no longer be something that is acceptable under this.
I believe, John, remind me if I'm incorrect. I can pull it up here too, but I believe trash may fall under kind of that um,
Y-
utility section, correct?
Right.
Oh.
Well, here's, yes, under, first of all, charging everybody for pests seems to be a mandatory fee. Now, if you agree that they'll come around every week and look for rats or whatever, then you sign up for that service. But a mandatory pest fee. Um, with respect to utility charge on section, you probably have it, two, last
See?
I, utility charge means charges by a landlord to a tenant for the use of utilities at a residential premises, including water, sewer, stormwater, electricity, internet, solid waste collection, and gas.
I think Gail had something to add.
Yeah, so at least on the version that I have, it has garbage fees as an optional fee. And I've seen situations where the landlords have some and maybe this is what you guys were talking about, some sort of valet service where like you're required to leave your trash out by the door at a certain time of day and they come and collect it. So I'm not sure what the trash utility fee is unless I'm just not sure what that is.
I thought the trash utility fee was like regular waste management services. Um, and then an optional fee is like that valet trash service. That's how it was in my mind.
That's I just don't know where we pay for what's that a part of? Is that a part of our I don't know where we're charged for trash, like as a homeowner where we're charged. So what is what utility fee is a landlord charging? Maybe I just need to look at my bill a little more closely.
I think
So
it's
a
listed
utility charge
differently.
is not a mandatory tenancy fee. A utility charge is exempted. It says does not include rent, a security deposit, or utility charge. So then you look on the next page as to what a utility charge is, and it talks about what it is. And then you look, utility charges, and then the last page, it kind of talks about what the rule is going to be with respect to utility charges under 6C. Whether utility charges are included in the rent must be disclosed in any advertisement or posting related to the residential premises and must be listed in the lease agreement. If utility charges are not included in the rent, utility charges or the method by which utility charges will be billed must be listed in the lease agreement with the optional tenancy fees as required in Section 6E. And that kind of goes to Councilmember Redina's point about the transparency. We get that you're going to ding tenants for these things, but we want to know up front what they're going to be and how much they are. Maybe ding is the wrong verb, assess them.
Okay, maybe I'll let this go. But where
I think
when are
there's
when are
two
tenants-
documents, and then one.
No,
Yeah.
I see the document. Where is a tenant charge for solid waste collection? Like what's that? What utility is that a part of? Is it a part of, maybe somebody just else knows this that I just don't, like, is it a part of your, I don't know, gas? Hannah, do you know?
I know, like we pay for waste management at my business. We rent a bin from the waste management company. We pay a monthly fee for it. I think most landlords include it because you kind of don't want to leave up trash to the tenant, like paying that bill. So you don't want a lot of solid waste on your property. Um, but yeah, I've personally never had a rental in Ann Arbor charge me for the trash. They just include that in rent. We have the bins and that's that. But I guess in theory, they could charge you the
Okay.
$15 a month or whatever for it.
Right. Well, I just wonder if it's going to be a little confusing between garbage collection and solid waste collection, because the garbage really seems to refer to those valet trash services that some landlords require tenants to use.
Yeah.
Maybe not a lot of them, but that's just my thought.
It does seem like a separate thing. It's like a service to use the trash service. Like theoretically, a tenant could just walk the bag down to the dumpster themselves and not use the valet service, right?
But solid waste can be four things. It can be trash, it could be recycling, it could be composting, and it could be yard waste. All that's under the penumbra of solid waste. And maybe we need to say capital S, capital W as defined in Chapter 26 of the code. But solid waste is a lot of things, or more than one thing.
Let's see. I saw other hands raised. Sheila and Councilmember Redina, did that answer the
Yeah, I
questions you
mean,
had?
I was gonna say a similar thing. I will go back into my notes also before Monday and see, because I know that we did talk about this and uh, specifically asked about like, isn't removal of garbage from the property a basic requirement of having a livable apartment? I will go back through kind of our notes over periods of modifying this. to see where we landed on including it under the utility section. And if that was perhaps an oversight, then I can work with staff to either get an amendment for Monday or have a better understanding of why it ended up being in there again. But I am just not remembering off the top of my head why it ended up getting included back in utility fees.
But some of it with respect to solid waste curb carts. Tenants are expected to take out the curb cart and bring it back, right? And sometimes that doesn't happen timely, and sometimes they get put in bike lanes, and sometimes tenants don't do the things that they're supposed to do in their lease or with respect to what the city expects for curb carts. And if there's a fee that's assessed to the tenant because they don't do that. So that's another aspect of this. If you're going to charge a tenant for not taking the curb cart back or for passing off when they put it in the bike lane or when they whatever, then that should be disclosed.
But that's not a fee, though. That's like a civil infraction. I mean, a penalty for not bringing your curb carts in isn't covered. Like, I guess I'm confused, and perhaps we should have been asking more about this in the discovery phase. Like, who's paying for trash? I mean, Hannah, are you paying for it because it's more convenient? Like, ours is included in the city, and I think our costs do. I mean, I will say that as a landlord, like we've had to pay to replace the dumpster, I think itself. We've had to buy a new dumpster, but like who's paying for the trash service day to day? Is that I haven't heard that as a common landlord thing to have to do, because in Ann Arbor it is included in our city stuff.
Maybe for us, because we're downtown and we use
Right.
the alley space.
DDA.
So they provide the recycling bins, but we have to pay for our own trash bins. So I don't know. I
And
wasn't
I was
aware
just
for the single
I
family
was
home.
just going to mention trash is there's a myriad of trash. There's the solid waste on the wheelers where the wheeler folks who drive our trucks. There's Recycle Ann Arbor. There's WM, formerly Waste Management. There's contractors. There's the DDA stuff. So trash is kind of complicated in the city as to how it gets picked up and the fees for it.
I think
But
that
if
currently at multifamily units, that you're not really charged a separate fee for waste management, because if you were, then that would get really wild. Like, how do you split that up amongst, 400 people, right? But it could be something either in in a future complex, depending on what happens in the future and who it, who owns that property in the future, or something that happens at a single family home, um, or like a condo rental, not not a typical multifamily housing unit. And so I get having it in there because it could actually be charged, if you wanted to nickel and dime someone. Um, but sorry, I do see the point in having it. I do see the point in having it listed as an optional fee, because I do believe it that it's that be, I don't I don't necessarily like, I think it should, it should be included in your rent. But if somebody isn't, then they do need to put it out there in the lease and in the advertisement that you're going to have to pay for trash, so you know how to budget. Sheila and then Councilmember Regina.
What I'll say is I've seen leases where they've required $30 a month for trash services. There's no way to go around it. No matter what, you have to pay the $30. They have it's apartment buildings. They have dumpsters in the back, and so they do the delivery from your apartment to the dumpsters, get rid of the dumpsters. They're charging a fee for that. Um, but there's not really a way to avoid that. And so, in my opinion, that's a part of moving into that building. So you can't really opt out of emptying your own dumpster.
That's why I say, like, when we're talking about rental transparency, because it's not about, because from the ordinance isn't about restricting fees, it's about saying you, as a renter, you have the right to know before you sign that lease that this is what's going to be charged to you, right? And so I understand it needing to be in there. I do think like it needs, maybe there should be an amendment, just to clarify that. I like the capital S for capital W for solid waste so that it does coincide with within what's already in the city code. So there is something for people to refer to. Councilmember Adina?
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, you actually just said a little bit about what I was planning to say, which is I think that was part of our discussion is we know that there are different circumstances across the city on how solid waste is handled. So it was hard for it to fit in a one size fits all, which is why it kind of got looped in. Similarly, when you move into a place, you don't really have an option around paying for water or having water or having gas or those types of things when you're moving in. This simply is creating kind of new requirements around how that information is disclosed. And so if you go into kind of the section 6 area there, you see that we now require that any of those utility charges must be listed in the lease agreement alongside the optional tenancy fees, so that again it's creating that additional transparency in those on utilities and any optional fees you may incur. And so that's that, to your point, that's really what this was about, was around creating transparency and trying to create as much as possible a situation where most of your costs outside of kind of utilities and anything you may choose to opt into is baked into that monthly cost of rent that's advertised.
Thank you. I did have one question, and it's about the enforcement when it's in advertisements. I know that like if it's on the website of of the complex itself or in property management complex that they have a lot more flexibility. But what if it's on like apartments.com or Zillow? Like how, when it's a national site like that, or if it's on one of the was it like realtor sites, how does, I don't know exactly how that's as enforceable because it's a national site and they don't always listen to a city, a, a single city.
You mean
Jordan?
there are third-party
Yeah.
vendors out there that are scrubbing uh, listings and kind of doing their own post?
Hmm.
You're saying that there's like fields that automatically get populated in a listing that way. Is that kind of where you're concerned? Like we can't change the
Right.
design of what the listing looks like. And I will say that in our experience, I don't know, maybe Robert Rob can I speak to it too, but generally those sites do have some sort of blank text box where you could put that to be compliant. It's work to update it, especially if you're changing them year to year. But I haven't. It's coming to mind. I have not had experience with any listing service that didn't allow you a unit description that you write free text or something in it if there isn't another place to put it. So I guess from my perspective, I haven't seen a place that there would be concern that you couldn't include that information, but perhaps the ordinance should slash could have an opportunity to say unless otherwise impossible on the listing site or something. But I haven't had that experience, and
Yeah.
maybe Bob's got.
I will say I will say that has not come up in conversations
Yeah.
with any of the larger
I don't
landlords
think
either.
so. Yeah.
Okay, I wasn't asking for like an amendment or a change or anything like that. I was just curious if on an, because like I said, most have a regular site anyway, but it was just wondering what like if they would be deemed if it was on a national site or not.
Um, I will also say I think there are a couple of things that are important in pointing out here because we recognize that this requires some changes and also potentially we'll learn something like that if we come across circumstances like that. Obviously, with every new ordinance, the kind of initial implementation phase, there's really a heavy emphasis from the city in terms of education and trying to get folks up to compliance. The goal is to actually have the ordinance being followed, not to be collecting, fines and fees from folks. We're implementing it because we want the policy to be implemented. But we also do have an effective date. We were originally operating with, this will go into effect 6 months after passage because we know it's going to require landlords to update their lease agreements. We know that it's going to require kind of some changes in policies and procedures and ways of operating. That got changed as we kind of kept moving forward, and so now the ordinance, this section of the ordinance, if passed, would fully go into effect on August 1st of 2026. And so there is kind of a built-in time period for landlords to prepare and get ready for this. And if suddenly, as we're going through this, we start hearing about a situation like that, it's something that perhaps we can come back and address.
Sheila, and I don't know if your hand was already up, George. Okay. Sheila?
I just had a clarifying question for the enforcement as it relates to the disclosure of rent and fees. Um, is each first offense, is that first offense per listing, or is it um, the first any violation by that landlord? I'm just wondering if they've listed several units and they all have the wrong prices, um, how that is, if those are each individual offenses.
I see it. Attorney Reiser has gone off camera, but if he is still with us, I would
Yeah,
defer to him.
I'm actually headed to another 5:30 function that I'm trying to do both. But potentially, that's not how we usually enforce now. I don't know that it would behoove us to write 20 tickets when one will get their attention and stop the behavior. We don't use these to maximize revenue like that. That's kind of not how we enforce. A lot of our ordinances are also enforceable per day. That's not something we typically do either, frankly. It's will the infraction curb the behavior and hold them accountable to some degree.
If I may jump back in again, also another important point to point out with the effective date being August 1st is I know that we have had many conversations around this Zoom table about enforcement of all of the ordinances that we have been implementing. I know from having conversations with staff, there are already concerns about adding another one of those things that they would need to enforce in the rental space. But I have had conversations with the city administrator and I'm having conversations with our CFO as well. And I spoke with our city attorney over the last couple of weeks about wanting to make sure that this staffing need is being addressed in our next budget. It sounds like there is a plan to include additional enforcement in our next city budget. And so it is also my hope that by the time that this goes into effect, we will have funded an enforcement staff person in some capacity in order to deal with our rental enforcement needs. So I have made it very clear that that is my top priority in this budget cycle, and it seems that I have staff's support so far in getting that included in our budget. So hopefully that will also help resolve some of our enforcement concerns.
Thank you. And that was really great news to know about the budget cycle and another enforcement officer or inspector, because as we've been saying, as new units come online, that's just more inspections that have to happen. So that's really great news. If there aren't any more questions, then we can move on to Hannah's resolution. Okay, we'll go ahead and move forward to Hannah's resolution.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and share my screen with the document. Let me find it. I kept it very short and straightforward, just generally saying that we endorse this amendment and we support passage of the amendment by City Council. I didn't get into the specifics, anything too specific in the ordinance, because I know we were going to be discussing the recent changes to the draft. So, um, yeah, does anyone have any feedback? Councilmember Redina? Yep.
Yeah, thanks. I would simply say, I think in general, what my colleagues are looking for is that the body supports the overall thing, and so I think actually this is more than enough in terms of demonstrating support. And if they ask questions, we can certainly share about the kind of robust conversations we've had here as well. But thank you so much for putting this together.
No problem.
Does anyone have any questions or comments? Then, nope, then we'll go ahead and move forward to voting on the um, resolution. Can I have a motion in support of the resolution?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the resolution, please unmute and say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, please unmute and say no. All right, the resolution is passed. And I know Kristen will get it to was it City Council agenda so that the rest of City Council knows that we are in support of the ordinance. And is it the second reading that is best to talk at the public hearing?
Yeah, I mean it's really up to you. There will be two meetings that this will show up. You can certainly come and speak at either one. But yes, it will be for first reading at our meeting on Tuesday because of MLK Day, and then assuming it makes it through first reading, it would come back for second reading, and that would be final adoption. And so either way, you are certainly welcome to join at one or both.
And you can come in person or you can do it via Zoom. And the instructions are, I think, on the agenda, right?
Yeah,
So,
and if anybody has any questions about signing up, feel free to reach out to me, and I'm happy to send them to you as well. But they're also on the city clerk's website, so there are a few places you can find them.
okay. And next we're move forward to the to new business, which is the first is a discussion about the comprehensive plan. Um, the was it public comment for the draft closed on January 5th. At the last City Planning Commission meeting, they did make a few possible edits to the draft, but it doesn't change the, I guess I would say, the spirit of the comprehensive land use plan. Um, did did everyone have a chance to read the plan? Or I guess I should ask, do you guys know what the comprehensive land use plan is? I know that we had someone from the city planning department come out and talk to us about the plan before. The comprehensive land use plan is basically a vision for how the land in the city will be used over the next, was it like 20 years, I think it is. And it is going to be a pretty big change for Ann Arbor for a lot of people, where neighborhoods will most likely no longer be just a lot of it will no longer be like just rows of single family homes, but hopefully will be like some single family homes, some duplexes, um, some multi-use buildings where it'll be di- I say diverse neighborhoods, not in terms of like ethnicity, but in terms of what's actually in the neighborhood, right? Where you would hopefully have a grocery store or a doctor's office where that you would be able to walk to, as opposed to having to drive from your neighborhood to the neighborhood across town. Um, and in my opinion, it kind of, I would say, modernizes the city layout a bit more and helps to make room for more housing and more businesses. It also emphasizes more walkability, more the ability to use a bicycle more, public transportation will hopefully increase. I would say under the land use plan, because with the plan, it's also kind of in conjunction with the park plan and the transportation plan as well. So it's that's why it's comprehensive, is what I would say. Um, because it does affect renters, current renters, because the hope is that there'll be more options in where you can rent in the city, and in what kind of dwelling you could rent in. Um, I do believe that the Renters Commission should speak up in support of the plan. That's my opinion. And if there's agreement, then I would come next meeting with a resolution in support of the plan. Um, are there any questions, comments? Jordan?
I would supporting the plan. I do still find that the plan lacks in kind of reparative housing measures, and the fact that we still really aren't committing to try to diversify our city in other ways and or come up with ways with lower income families to be able to build more longer term wealth. So I would ask that we consider in the resolution to I don't know, name some of those specifics that would be nice to have specifically named in the resolution, but I am open to other thoughts.
Well, typically with a land use plan, it's not necessarily specifying how exactly people will be able to buy or rent those houses. That's the policies that come later. This is like the vision of there will be duplexes or triplexes or quadruplexes. There will be um, multifamily housing. You can build an ADU, right? It's more about what can be built and where it can be built. And but the plan itself, while it's not specific on it, within the plan, within the history, like the history portion of it, and in a couple of other sections, it does talk about some of the funding mechanisms, such as, there's, from what I understand, there's still going to be like the PUD. And with the PUD, then you can build in the affordability, right? There'll still be the pilot where the payment in lieu of taxes, so money can go to like the affordable housing fund. We do have the affordable housing millage, which is to build the dwelling. It's just so expensive to build, right? Um, the city can still put forward bonds, they can still put forward the public-private partnerships within the plan. You can still have um, you can have co-ops still, there's still a range of things that can be done policy-wise outside of the plan. The plan itself is just about how do you want physically, what do you want a neighborhood to look like? I hope I described that right. If not, Councilmember Radina and then Hannah.
Um, yeah, so I also just wanted to Jordan, if you pull up the draft at some point, I believe it's page 27, speaks to this a little bit. And I'm always open for us to hear additional things that we should be including in kind of the visioning of the plan. There is a section, moreover, the city must focus on reparative actions that promote equity across all neighborhoods rather than focusing on preserving the status quo and solely protecting the existing character and natural environment. Future policies should aim to distribute the benefits of increased housing and commercial opportunities more equitably, ensuring the flexibility needed for sustainable growth. This plan embraces the values of affordability, equity, sustainability, and dynamism to guide Ann Arbor into the future. Like many cities, I mean, it goes on, and so there is some reference to it. To the point that Rosanita was making, I don't know that it gets into the specifics of exactly how that is going to happen yet. I think there is some effort by the drafters, the planning commission's staff, and of course council, to make sure that that is a focus of the plan as well, because it certainly is. It speaks to our values of trying to make our housing supply in Ann Arbor more affordable. The one other thing I will add is, I think Rosanita touched on this briefly. I think, to the extent that there has been a lot of conversation in the community about this plan, I would say the vast majority of the discussion has been around changes to residential zones. One of the things that Rosanita pointed out is kind of the biggest change would be that there is an effort through this plan to end kind of the practice of exclusionary single family zoning, and by doing so, kind of creating opportunities where currently everything and anywhere that is currently zoned for single family, going forward would allow up to a three-story triplex. That is, language that council has already injected into this process after hearing from the community about their comfort level in terms of the amount of density and growth. There is that for residential zones, and then anything larger would fall into the transition and hub districts that are created throughout the city. There is a kind of a significant effort to streamline and make our zoning districts a little clearer and less cumbersome. We have a lot of different zoning categories currently. We will still have more zoning categories than just, residential transition and hub as we move into the zoning process. But the goal here is to kind of remove the, multitude of zoning districts that currently exist throughout the city, streamline that process, and make it a little bit easier to create more housing opportunity. And I will speak to the fact we are not the first city, or frankly, the state even to do this. Minneapolis, Portland, Sacramento, Alexandria, Virginia have all kind of moved in this direction, and then there are states that have done so as well. And so Oregon, California, Washington, Maine, and I believe even Montana have taken steps to end the practice of exclusionary single family zoning. And so this is a real effort to kind of modernize and move towards the fact that we have a housing shortage problem, not just here in Ann Arbor, but throughout the state and across the nation. And so this is the city's effort to address that and hopefully make more housing abundance, but then also with that, more housing affordability.
And I will say, I've lived in other cities where this was already a thing over 20 years ago. You had mixed use neighborhoods. Some would be considered suburbs. And in a way, to me, it just feels like Ann Arbor is kind of catching up. Hannah and then Sheila.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out a section that I liked, and I think that's very applicable to the scope of our commission. On page 64 and 65, the goal of supporting all residents in accessing quality housing and mitigating displacement. It specifically mentions trying to promote home repair to keep units habitable, eviction prevention programs, emergency rental assistance, code enforcement. And it also specifically mentions a tenant opportunity to purchase, which I know is something we had talked about last year. We didn't put it on the work plan this year. But I think these are all important topics that we should continue to focus on in our commission. And I'm glad they're included in the plan, in addition to like all the actual like zoning and planning type of materials.
Thank you. And Sheila?
I think there are two things I wanted more info on. One of them is page 138. Um, it's 1.3 with regards to subsidized income eligible affordable housing. It says remove the height exceptions in the residential category to minimize adverse shading impacts on adjacent properties. Guess I just wanted to know more about the rationale behind that. And then the second item is page 136, exploring the impacts of short-term rentals and pursue restrictions in the transition category if warranted. I guess I just wanted to know more about what those restrictions could look like. I couldn't seem to find it in the document.
Sorry, what page was the first point?
138, and it's going to be 1.3. I guess I'm just wondering if the purpose is expanding affordable housing.
So I know that certainly we want to expand more affordable housing opportunities throughout the city. But you specifically mentioned remove the, oh, I see now. Remove the height exceptions in residential category to minimize adverse shading impacts on adjacent properties. Um, this may refer to, I'm trying to see where it's kind of falling in the overall section. Um, there are in several of the areas, so like in the transition district, for example, there's kind of there will be a formula kind of built in on your height. And so, if you are a transition district directly next to a residential district, the further you get away from the property line, the taller you can go. And so it kind of ramps up based on, the property that would be next to you, to make sure that we're not having those situations where you have an 8-story building next to, like, right on the property line of a single family home. And so that may be what that section is referring to. I'm trying to kind of dig through here.
I think it has to do with that, but also, I mean, there are people who have a single family home, or like it doesn't necessarily have to be a single family home, but a shorter home, I would say. And then you have a property next door that's like 6 stories, and suddenly your entire backyard is shade, or your front yard is shade. And so where you had your garden, you no longer have the ability to grow certain things, right? Because now it's shade all day long. And so this way, if you actually have certain height requirements, so it's like it's not an 8-story building next to your 1-story home, then the person with the 1-story home is less likely to complain about a 3-story building next to them, because they can still go to their backyard, enjoy the sunshine, enjoy gardening, or whatever they do in their backyard without missing out on sunlight on those few sunlight days that we have in Michigan. Um, was there a second? There was a second part.
Yeah.
This,
And I guess
and then we'll go to Robert.
I guess my response to that is it seems like we had a height exception previously. Did that height exception produce these unwanted effects while it was in place to the extent that it needs to be removed?
I mean, I personally don't know the numbers, but I do know that there are people who have, say, built a second story onto their house and or wanted to build things, and the neighbor has said no because it will shade my yard. Um, and so I think if you look at it that way, and then you say, well, now the development could be there, then instead of the one story, then they're definitely going to say something about the four-story house next door
I,
or
I, I
four-story duplex
also, I also
apartments.
wonder if, since we plan to discuss this at a second meeting, I wonder if, Kristen, is this one that you can potentially take a note on and check with planning staff on kind of the purpose for that, the origination of that section, of that language? Maybe Sheila, you could send it to her directly since you might have it more handily, so that we could actually get a direct answer from the folks who have drafted this, because that is actually not one that I have been asked yet, and so I don't exactly know where the rationale came for that exact one.
I can do
And then
that.
the
And
second
then
part had to do with stars.
I think that was 136 was the second part.
And sorry, can you repeat what the question was?
I think it's page 136. I just wanted to know more about the statement pursue restrictions in the transition category with regards to short-term rentals.
Yeah, so I think that would specifically be around wanting to ensure that the growth we see is not abundantly short-term rental, but rather is actual long-term housing opportunities for folks who live here in the city.
I guess I'm wondering what those restrictions might look like if we find that that is the case.
So we currently have some restrictions in place here in the city. For example, in residential zones currently, you can, other than those that were operating as a permitted use prior to the ordinance being adopted, so they had kind of a legal non-conforming uh, right to continue operating. Um, Currently we don't allow non-owner occupied short-term rentals in residential zones, for example. And so you would have to actually occupy your residence in order to be able to turn it into a short-term rental. You can't purchase up a bunch of houses for the sole purpose of operating a short-term rental business. So that's one of the examples that we currently have on the books. And I think this might be referencing kind of ensuring that those transfer forward into future zoning as well.
Bob?
Yeah, and Chair Ratcliffe, you, I think, did a good job of explaining this in your initial comments. But remember that this plan doesn't actually implement anything. It takes further council action to implement anything that is suggested in the plan. So this plan is, and I just want to make sure that it's clear that this isn't implementing a bunch of things. It's providing a guidance document that sort of guides maybe council, I don't know if it's priorities or council views on how things should go. So I think it's important to state because I think that this plan is kind of viewed as this is how it's going to be. And I would think that all these comments are good and continue to advocate for them because further council action will be required. So I think that that's an important thing to remember is this is guidance. The actual ordinance changes that may implement these things come later.
And to that, I would also say, like I said, like I'm for the vision of the plan, right? Like I am for these mixed use neighborhoods. I want to see more people here. I want to be able to do what I did when I grew up, which was to walk, and what I can still do in my neighborhood, right? Which is to walk to the grocery store. If I'm ambitious, walk to the library. But well, no, the library's further now. but I used to be able to walk to the library, walk to Baskin Robbins, hop. I can still do this, walk a short distance, hop on a bus. And I want to be able to I want other people to be able to experience that here. It shouldn't be a privilege. It should just, to me, it should be that everyone has the opportunity to do that. And so that's why, and so I'm for, letting council know that I'm for the plan. And I want to know the if the Renters Commission is also for the vision of the plan. Um, and then as an individual, when it's time to look just like we were doing under the current plan, because under the current plan, we just did a resolution in support of an ordinance today, right? Um, this new plan doesn't change those kinds of things. And I think that that's something that people are forgetting in this whole conversation, right? Is that it doesn't mean that we still can't ask for, assistance for renters, that we still can't ask for affordable housing on the definition, of what that is, right? It doesn't mean anything like that. It doesn't mean that a neighborhood group can't say, hey, to the ride, can you please put a bus stop here? It doesn't change their ability to ask for more. And I just want to point that out. The council and the planning, city planning staff, the ride, parks, all of that, they're still going to do their jobs. This to me is just, what do you want the landscape of Ann Arbor to look like? What do you want the city skyline to look like? Right? What do you want to be able to do in your neighborhood? And I think that that's something, like, to me, that's how it can and should be viewed. What other housing options do you want? Do you always want to live only in an apartment or rent out a 3-bedroom home? I think those are things that as renters we need to think about. If there are no more comments, I would ask to take a vote. So I'm making a motion for us to have a resolution at the next meeting in support of the plan. Is there a voting member who will second that?
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that? All right, then all those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Aye. All those opposed, thank you. All those opposed, please unmute and say no. If you want to abstain, please unmute and say no. Abstain, sorry. All right, then the motion passed, and next meeting, I'll come with the resolution informing council that we want them to approve the comprehensive land use plan. All right, then with that done, we'll go on to the next piece of new business, which is if there's a U of M Central Student Government Survey update.
There is not, and so I will reach out again.
Okay, then we'll move forward to reports. Are there any reports from City Council? Any, I guess, new reports from City Council?
I don't have a new report or anything to add at this moment.
Okay, then is there a new report from any of the commissioners? Toya?
Aye. So after the commission's visit to Avalon a couple months ago, right now the staff at one of Avalon properties would like to invite the commission back to a specific property in hopes of having the commission at a presentation that the staff at that property wants to do for the tenants. So whereas the previous visit to Avalon was more for the services side of Avalon. This is for more for the tenants in collaboration with some property managers within Avalon. So they wanted me to extend that invitation to the commission in hopes that we will be willing to come to one of the properties in the near future for a presentation. They're looking to put together a tenants' rights presentation for the tenants in one of the properties. So maybe this is something that we could discuss at the next work plan meeting as we continue to work on the 2026 work plan for like community engagement. So I just wanted to put that out there.
That'd be great. And can you find out some dates that they're looking for?
Yeah, I'll find that out. They're still working through it with the property managers within Avalon, so they don't have like specific dates. But I did want to present that to the commission tonight just to let everyone know that there is an invitation to come back and speak at Avalon tenants. So I will get some more information from the staff at that property and have some more for everyone at our work plan meeting next month.
Okay, thank you. Hannah?
Yeah, at one of our work plan meetings in the past couple months, I remember Sheila mentioned potentially having some sort of presentation like that to our commission. And I think that might be good for us to do before we start doing more stakeholder engagement events. So we could be a little more informed about legal rights and such. So I don't know if we want to do that at like a regular meeting or we could do that at one of the work plan meetings in addition to having a presentation for Avalon. Um, Sheila, does that sound like something you could help us organize?
To clarify, this is regarding the Ann Arbor Tenants Union talk on the February meeting or a separate Know Your Rights?
Yeah, like a separate know your rights thing, just kind of like a rundown, like just the basics that like maybe every tenant should know, separate
I
from the tenants union or other organizations.
I can see. I can ask, or we weren't wanting an organization to do it.
I think we were talking about, was it having legal services of,
Yeah.
is it
We
South?
do, I do have a presentation that we made. So I'll double check with them, get it approved, and then I'll send an email saying that maybe we can have one of them come in or I can give the presentation. Would we want this for the February meeting?
I think if we have time during the February meeting, I don't know how much we have on the agenda right now or like how long the presentation would be. 'Cause I don't want our meeting to be several hours, but
It is, I think it's about 20 minutes long.
Jordan?
One thing to think about, and I don't have strong feelings either way, but maybe some time to advertise it. Like if we are, I don't know, if we are offering this, I'm all about accessibility as much as we can. So if we did March or later, maybe then we'd have some time to like make up some flyers to get around to Ann Arbor Community Group, other places, places that would reach students to kind of offer that to a wider audience would be my slight preference. But up to folks' bandwidth and time to figure that out too.
Hannah?
I guess I wanted to throw out that like our meetings are recorded, so like if we do have the presentation, people can watch it at any time on YouTube, so they don't necessarily have to make it to the meeting. But I agree, it would be good to like get the word out there so people know that like that video exists and people can reference it.
I guess one question would be, Sheila, do you know approximately how long would it take to get it approved to have the presentation, because if it takes like a few weeks to get it approved, then it does make more sense to have it for March, I think, than February, just so that we have more time to get it out there.
I think March would be a safer bet.
Okay. So then I think, for February's work plan session, I think it would be a good idea to find out more information kind of about what Avalon would like to hear from us specifically, because it may be that it's not necessarily something that's required by like legal services, but it's more about what Ann Arbor ordinances are, or something. Like, we don't know yet. Is that okay, Toya?
Yeah, that's great. So one of the staff at this particular property did put together a presentation that they would like to share with the commission as well. And I can also send that out to, you, Rosanita, or Hannah. Um, they kind of wanted someone from the commission to review the presentation about tenants' rights and responsibilities. Um, so I don't know if that's something that you guys will want to do or is able to do.
Um, is this for a presentation that then they would be giving to other staff members or to
Tenant,
tenants?
tenant, yeah.
Is it based off of the tenants' rights and responsibilities handbook?
Yeah.
Um,
And then, like I say, I can have more information at February's work plan meeting.
okay. That would be great to find out more about what specifically they're looking for, including about that review.
Mhm.
Hannah?
Yeah, so for the next work plan meeting, I think we'll focus on the Avalon details. And then maybe this is a good opportunity for us to start designing some of the like brochures and materials that we want to bring to the stakeholder engagement events, kind of based on like what questions they're asking for, what resources they're asking for. And maybe we could get something put together to have ready for when we do meet with Avalon. Um, that was one of our priorities in the work plan is having more user-friendly materials to share with people, whether that's QR codes or handouts or whatever. So, in general, does anyone have anything else we want to work on at the work plan meeting for February? If you guys think of anything, you could email me.
Let's see, is there anything else from the commissioners? Then we'll move forward to our staff liaison, to Kristen, because I do know that there's something there from her.
We are approaching reappointment season, so I'll reach out to renters commissioners who have a term ending this year. If I do reach out to you and you've only been serving for a little while, it's because you've been appointed to a partial term. And if you'd like to be reappointed, we just ask that you complete the reappointment app or the same application you filled out to be considered originally. And then I'll provide that information to our boards and commissions coordinators so that we can make sure to have you on the council agenda for reappointments. So I'll reach out and then we'll give you guys about a month or two to get that turned in.
Okay. Oh, I was looking at the Renters Commission page under boards and commissions where it lists the commissioners and the dates, and one of the commissioners is listed twice
I can take a
with
look.
two different term ending dates. like one says that their term is over, I think in May of this year, and I think the next one says that it's May of next year.
I will double check. I'll check in with I'll take a look and I'll check in with our boards and commissions coordinator.
Okay, thank you. Next on the agenda is the communications to the Renters Commission. Sorry. There were several communications to the Renters Commission. The first one, there was one from Courthouse Square. And that one is someone who has had says that they've had a non-functioning toilet for years. Information was given, I guess, to Janet Farrell at the city, and I just don't know what to do about Courthouse Square. There was another update from the person at Courthouse Square, and they did say that they fixed the toilet, I guess. I don't know what that means. I do remember that the AATU at one point was working with the residents at Courthouse Square. Sheila, do you know how that's going?
Yeah. So their union, I believe last month or the month before, they elected new officers. It's going pretty smoothly. They recently saw a decrease in the number of hours of their security, and they petitioned management, and also sent a letter to the sheriff's office. And Courthouse Square ended up revising their security hours to the hours that the union wanted. So it seems like, in terms of the union's relationship to management and their ability to operate successfully, seems to be going well. So if you'd like, I can forward this person along to Charles and Sheila, who are tenants at Courthouse Square and work in the union.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea. And I don't know if we do get more further emails from Courthouse Square. Kristen, is giving them the union information something that we can do?
I will find out. I think that it seems like it may be a good resource for renters, so I will check with other staff. And then if the answer is yes, we'll update the automatic reply to include that. And then it's something I can also include in my responses to emailers. But I will add it to my list.
Thank you. Next was a complaint about Glencoe Hills. But or was it Glencoe Hills? Yes, Glencoe Hills, but the address that they gave was actually technically, I guess, Pennsfield Township. And so Kristen gave the link to their rental housing division website. Sometimes I know the addresses and where the cutoff line is for the city of Ann Arbor can be a little confusing. To me, that's an understatement because I grew up here and I still get confused sometimes. So thank you. And then there was another person who said that they needed some support. Kristen asked for more information. That was sent out today. I don't know if there's an update on that, but I think too, we might, depending on what the support is, it might be good to also include like Hawk in there.
I did also give them a call because they asked for a phone call and they didn't answer. So if they do respond, I'll follow up with them and then I'll include that communication in the next meeting.
Thanks. And then there was one that said that they had looked through the comprehensive land use plan and that it doesn't require developers to build anything affordable ever. And they say that it gives no means to protect what's already there. And it's a difficult one, I know, for Kristen to give a response to. So she said that she'd, you know, give it to us here for the Renters Commission. I will say that again, the plan does talk about affordable housing in it. It talks about what the city already has and does, and sounds like plans to continue to do. Some things in some units, it's because of the funding source for when that current affordable housing was built. The comprehensive land use plan has no bearing on that period, because, like, say it was built using LIHTC funding, that is federal and state funding, which is set for like typically 15 years, sometimes 30 years. And so that particular housing is, as affordability is set, and then the owners have the option to do an additional amount of time, for that, to extend that time. I think is the best way to put it. They can, and even if that property is acquired, then there's actually acquisition funds under LIHTC as well, to help fund that acquisition if it's approved at the state level for them to do that. The same if they are receiving HUD funding, or if they had a particular type of loan. If it's a private-public partnership with the city, there is a contract with that as well. And so I don't want people to lose sight of that. And also to remind people again that the land use plan, it doesn't mean that you can't continue to advocate. It's the vision of what the landscape and the skyline of the city is going to look like, and what it's like when you're going around the city. But you can still advocate for policies at the local level. You can still advocate for more funding at the state and the federal level as well. Hannah?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure that the city can require affordable housing because of the ban on rent control. You can't say, oh, you must build an apartment with this amount of rent. It's completely up to the developer and how they get their funding source. And if anything, I think the plan removes a lot of the barriers in the zoning to allow for smaller properties that are cheaper to develop. So if anything, yes, it could occur more naturally, increasing supply will reduce rent costs. So I think anything to remove barriers in development is going to help. And I also wanted to point it out in draft two of the plan, there was a housing addendum that really goes deep into a lot of this stuff. And they linked to the housing literature review that the planning department used, and it links to multiple peer-reviewed studies on all of these things if people wanted to really dive deeper into, I guess, the theory and decision making behind all of this. Um,
And
yeah, that's just my
the
two
third
cents.
draft also has the appendices, which also lists that, as well. Um, like, I don't agree necessarily with every single thing that was written about the plan, but I do know that affordable housing was addressed because it is not in detail, but because it's not necessarily a specific policy, detailed policy document, but it's a vision document. And this is kind of going into the weeds a little bit, but the main source of funding to build what we know of as affordable housing is LIHTC funding. And LIHTC funding is based on this qualified plan at the state level that they put out. And in that, because we are not an opportunity zone kind of city, we have, for this state, we have a pretty high income threshold. We don't have a very large low income population or pockets of low income areas. It's very hard to get that funding here in the city. There are projects that have received that funding mainly because they're in transportation areas, transportation zones, right? And that is something that gives you a leg up when you're applying for these plans. So when you're looking at the comprehensive land use plan and we're looking at, talking about more public transportation zones and things like that, that actually is one way to help get more affordable housing built using those outside funds that would require the affordability for 15 to 30 years. And the next one was also about the comprehensive land use plan and why it won't work. And there's a podcast listed as well. There's a lot that goes into building houses, building apartment complex, building any sort of dwelling. And I like a good podcast. I'll listen to I'm not going to say don't listen to the episode because it's good to hear. To me, it's good to hear what people's concerns are. And that can also help, I think, help the Renters Commission to know what to look for, what to think about advocating for in city council policies as we advise the council on what renters need. And so I'm never going to discount a person's opinion on that or their lived experience in that. And so I do want to put that out there. That was the last of the communications. Are there any questions or comments about the communications? Okay, then we'll move on to the second to the last item on the agenda, which is the second general public comment, and I do see a hand raised.
All right. Again, if you're calling in and you'd like to address the Renters Commission about any topic for up to 3 minutes, you can press *9 to raise your hand. It looks like both attendees are called in and there is one hand up. So caller with the phone number ending in 534 can address the Renters Commission starting now.
Good evening. My name is Tom Stahlberg. I live at 1202 Traver Street in Ann Arbor. And I'm who wrote in with the comments on why the comprehensive land use plan won't work, particularly for affordability. And I really would appreciate you clicking on that link and listening to the interview that I did with Lucy and Lance about that. And it goes into the details of why the comprehensive land use plan is going to actually make things less affordable, particularly for the people in the modest segments of the market, be it renters or owners. And I really appreciate you listening to that. It's pretty easy listening, conversational type piece. The couple of things that you've mentioned, one of them is like the PUD issue and how the plan will reduce the amount of affordability I'm sorry, affordable housing contributions from developers, because right now, for example, I can point to one that's in the pipeline that is R4C zoning compilation of properties. Right now, there's no short-term housing. Short-term rentals allowed there. It's prohibited in that area. It's designated for hub in the comprehensive land use plan. Right now, if you do a PUD, they can get a couple hundred units, and they'd have 30 units or more of affordable housing. You put the comprehensive land use plan into play with the hub designation for that location, and they get those units without having to do a PUD, so they don't have to give the affordable housing contribution. So that would cost us right there over 30 units of affordable housing. That height bonus issue that they were talking about, there's a way right now to achieve a 3-story building with a height bonus, and you have to give 15% affordable housing or specific sustainability benefit instead to get that. And so under the plan, they're going to take that out. You're going to be able to achieve that same height building by right without having to provide that 15% affordable housing. So right there, these are ways that the comprehensive plan is actually reducing the kind of contributions to the affordable housing fund in units or dollars that would be available now that we're going to lose. But in my interview, I talk about more market forces in terms of we're going to actually reduce the supply of moderate housing, because we're going to add a lot of expensive housing, and the housing that's going to get torn down or be replaced is going to be the more moderate ones. And so we're actually reducing the supply of moderate housing, and that's going to accelerate the rent and ownership costs. So please listen to that. And short-term rentals are not being addressed, and properties that are residential that are moved into transition are automatically vulnerable to short-term rentals, replacing long-term housing for renters and owners. Thank you very much for your consideration.
All right, it looks like the other caller also has a hand raised. Caller with phone number ending in 134. You can address the Renters Commission starting now.
Yeah, thank you very much. This is Ken Garber. I'm a renter in the 2nd Ward, and I wasn't going to call in. I've been listening with interest. I'm glad to see the rent transparency and junk fee ordinance moving forward, and thanks to Councilmember Radina and everyone else who worked on that. I'm calling in because Commissioner Razzulli did bring up this issue of height exceptions on page 138 of the comp plan, and I've been very involved in discussions around that. Mr. Stolberg, did mention that what happened was in 2021, City Council passed an amendment to the City Code that would allow 30% extra height if you provide as the 15% affordable housing or certain sustainability elements, some solar and building electrification. The way this is played out is that no one is using the affordable housing exception, or bonus, if you will. They're all using the sustainability one because it's very unbalanced. The only use of the affordability height exception was for 121 Catherine, and as you know, that's Avalon Housing. All they do is affordable housing. So there's active discussions at the Planning Commission about fixing the problem with this. What the comp plan refers to is the fact that residential neighborhoods were objecting to this in their areas because you could take the 3-story height exception and make it higher, 4 stories instead. And so the comp plan basically folded on that issue and said, we're going to exempt residential neighborhoods from the height exception. But what I'm involved in now is active discussions on fixing this ordinance, and I'm trying to get it required to have both sustainability and affordability for a development to get the 30% extra height in whatever district. To tighten up the sustainability requirements. So this is something that the Renters Commission might want to actually look at. because it could have an impact. Right now, the reason we're seeing 19-story high-rises mainly in the South University area is they're taking advantage of this and basically making almost no investment to get millions of dollars of added value to their buildings, and not putting in any affordable housing. So this is not really related to the comp plan, but it's an active issue. After discussion at the Planning Commission, they're going to come back with a revised ordinance sometime soon, and that's something that Renters Commission might want to weigh in on, to make sure that if they're going to add 30% extra height to a building, that they actually put in affordable housing, and that's what I've been pushing for. So, as to Mr. Selberg's comment, I don't know which future is most likely, whether additional housing under the comp plan will lead to more affordability and more choice, or whether it will lead to the scenario he describes, where investors will buy up the more affordable properties, tear down the existing homes, and put up unaffordable triplexes. I hope it's the first outcome, but there have been some strong arguments the Planning Commission made that the second will take place, some of them by Mr. Stolberg. I honestly am agnostic on it, but it's something the Renters Commission might want to seriously consider. And so I'm probably approaching my 3 minutes, but I appreciate all your work, and I look forward to hearing about future initiatives. Thank you very much.
There are no other callers.
Okay, as a commission, we're not allowed to respond directly to the people who call in. But I do want to say thank you both for calling in and expressing your thoughts and your opinions. We don't always get a lot of people who do call in, so we do appreciate hearing from people around the city. I think that is it for us. So I just want to say, have a great rest of the month. If you want to call in for the public hearing, if you wanted to attend the public hearing on at the city council meeting, the council meeting itself is next week on Tuesday, because Monday is Martin Luther King Day and the city is closed. And it is at 7 p.m. at Larkham. If you are on the Renters Commission and you want information about where to go, then feel free to email me, or I'm volunteering Kristen to email her or contact her. You can also call into the meeting, and again, we can give you that information as well. You can also write to your city councilman, your particular city council member who represents you, to let them know how you feel about the ordinance, if you want them to support it. With that said, have a great rest of the night, and the meeting is adjourned. And we'll see you hopefully at the working session the second Tuesday in February at 5:30. Same link. All right. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great night.